Hey guys, it's Charlene. Today I'm going to show you how to make two gorgeous, clean, and simple cards, and I'm going to show you some easy tips and tricks on how to accomplish this. For these two cards, I'm using the Botanical Line Art Craft Your Life Project Kit from Altenew. I'm starting out here with the stamps, and I just want to show you, I really love Altenew because they include all this information on how to put things together, and they give you lots of ideas for colors. I think that's awesome. So I've got some black pigment ink here because I'm going to be ink blending with pigment inks for this first card. And I'm going to stamp out this large floral stamp from the stamp set, and it's just beautiful. Thing that's nice about these Craft Your Life project kits is they generally come with stamps, stencils, embossing folder, and just everything kind of coordinates together. So I'm going to use this large stamp. I'm making an A2 size card, so that's 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I've stamped once and I've rotated 180 degrees for this second stamping. This is a great way to fill up the front of a card and make a very clean and simple card. You just grab a large stamp, florals in particular work really well, and you place it so that you have a little bit of a gap between the two images, but you want them to be in the corners so that way they kind of mirror each other. So I've got some pigment ink here. I'm using VersaFine Clair. I love this pigment ink. It's probably my favorite. And I'm coming in here. This is Paradise. It's a really nice bright blue. I know normally we don't do a lot of ink blending with pigment inks, but they actually are really, really pretty to ink blend with. I don't use them as often because I don't have a ton of colors. I essentially just have the rainbow from VersaFine Clair, but I'm working on it. I'm going to be getting myself some more colors. So I've got the layering stencil here. I'm starting out with the first layer, and in order to get this beautiful soft blend between two colors, what I've done is I started with the blue in the center of the flower, and I very gently worked my way out in a circle. And anytime I brought ink in, I started again at the circle in the center and worked my way out because I don't want to have any dark, harsh lines in the center where the purple and the blue are going to meet. So the purple color is called Monarch. It's a very beautiful purple. And you can see what I'm doing. I'm picking up some purple, not using a lot of ink here at all, guys. Very little blue, very little purple. It's easy to add ink, impossible to take it away. So I've just put a little bit on my brush, and for the outer part of the petals, I'm starting at the very edge of the stencil and very lightly working my way in because I want the darker color to be on the edges and I want it to fade towards the middle of those petals. So always when you're doing this kind of faded transition of two colors on a flower, you start dark in the center, fade out towards the in-between part of those petals, and then start dark on the edges of the petals and fade with your other color into the middle of those petals. Hopefully that makes sense as you're here watching it. But you can see this blue and purple look gorgeous together. And what's really nice about the pigment inks is they're just really saturated with color because they are a pigment ink. Oh, look how gorgeous that is. Now you will notice I got a little bit of ink there off to the side because I accidentally went through my stencil in one of the other spots. I should have paid more attention and covered that up. But easy enough fix. I just used a white rubber eraser and I just ran it over there. And because the ink was so lightly applied there, it was easy to get it off. Now I've done both flowers, all the petals, each layer of the layering stencils, and now I'm just doing the center of the flowers. Now you could leave these white if you're doing this kind of fun two color combination like I'm doing here, or you can softly color them in one of the colors. You could bring in a different color. I felt like I wanted to keep it very much with just the blue and the purple. I didn't want to bring in any other colors on this card. So I brought the blue in, and instead of just, filling it all in like I normally would, I start around the edge of the circle and just very lightly brushed some ink on there just to give it that little bit of a blue haze around the edges of the center. So now I'm coming in here with one of the leaf stamps from the stamp set. And this is where we're going to get that really nice line art kind of look, is because I'm not going to color in the leaves. And I'm doing the same technique I did with the flowers. I'm stamping in one corner, flipping 180 degrees, and then I'm going to stamp in on the other corner. So I've got these leaf pieces coming in, kind of filling up that white space of the background of the card, but they're there just as filler because the focal point, the showstopper on this card is those two beautifully ink blended floral images, and I didn't want to take away from that. Now, certainly you could color these in any color you want. You could absolutely color, your leaves in green and do the flowers in more traditional kind of colors, whatever works well for you. But I just wanted to show you this fun and kind of pretty simple, actually, clean and simple card. Well, hence clean and simple. That would make sense, Charlene. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and heat emboss my sentiment here. I have a piece of black cardstock and I added some anti-static powder tool. I'm using some VersaMark embossing ink here, and I always make sure to get a good amount of ink on the stamp. You really want that ink to transfer onto your cardstock. And now I'm using some super fine white embossing powder, and this is from Wow. It's their bright white opaque. It's a really nice embossing powder for a white embossing powder. I think this is slowly taking over my top position, I think, right now for white embossing powder. But you can see it, this sentiment strip is kind of thicker than the standard sort of square or thin strip you would do for a sentiment. I thought it looked kind of fun and different and made this card a little bit more boxy in contrast with the soft lines of the line art. But I could just be making all that up and it doesn't look good. I don't know. You guys let me know down in the comments what you think. I thought it was kind of a fun little design choice there to use a thicker strip across the center of the card. But I've used double-sided tape there on the back and I'm just gonna smooth that down. I did cut my strip, you can see, a little bit wider than the cut down card panel, and that's so I could just trim off the edges. Now I am gonna pop this up onto a white A2 sized card base, but first here I'm gonna add a few little extra details using a Copic multiliner. I just wanted to come in and add a few dots to the centers of those flowers. In hindsight, I probably would have left that off, but I think it looks nice. So you can see there I did trim it down so it's slightly smaller than the card base, so you get a nice little white border all the way around. And this is popped up on some foam tape, so there's a little bit of added dimension there. Just adds a nice look for your eye. Added a few gemstones on there and that finishes off the card. Now for my second card, I'm going to be using the included embossing folder and coordinating stencil. So I've got this embossing folder here. I've placed it in there, misted my paper with water. Now what that does is it just helps it to not crack or bend. So light misting of water, you don't need to drench your paper, but it's a good idea to do that when you have really fine details on your embossing folder. Because there's really fine lines on this image, I thought that was important to do. Now you can see I've got my paper pouncers out here and I have the coordinating stencil. Now I did not worry about getting this lined up perfectly. In fact, on any set I've ever worked with where there is a stencil and a coordinating embossing folder, it's really hard to get them lined up perfectly. So I don't worry about it so much. I just get it on there so I kind of like how it looks and then I start going. And it actually usually ends up looking pretty cool because the embossed image almost creates sort of a shadow of where you've colored. I came in there with some twisted citron and now I've got some rustic wilderness and I'm using distress oxides here. Oxides layer really, really well and they work great with the pouncers. So I'm not having really to worry about holding my stencil down really hard. You can see I am using a sticky mat, and I have my cardstock on that, and then I have the stencil over the top. But just the sticky mat's kind of helping to hold the stencil in place. It's not moving around a lot. So you can see I'm coming in with the pouncer and I'm going around kind of the edges of the leaves and then up the center part of the stem, and that kind of gets the base of the leaves. I'm not worried about being super exact here. I just want this to have a little bit of variation and shading instead of just being kind of a solid green all over the place. The Rustic Wilderness and Twisted Citron I find go together really well for leaves, plants, anything like that. So give that color combination a try. If you like it darker, you just add more Rustic Wilderness. If you want it to be brighter and kind of more springy, then just use more Twisted Citron. You can do this same thing with a blending brush. If you don't have paper pouncers, just use a really light hand with your blending brush. Because you are stenciling over the top of a raised embossed image, you don't want to kind of get underneath the stencil areas with those bristles of your blending brush. So just keep that in mind. This is June's kit, so if you order now, you'll be able to get it, but it will not be coming until June, and you have until June 2nd to sign up for that. It's part of the Craft Your Life Project Kit subscription. It's a great subscription. I've had it several different times. You can cancel at any time if you need to, but I would say don't wait. Make sure you go over and sign up, because if you're anything like me, you will forget, and then you might miss out on the deadline to sign up by, which is June 2nd. So I want to show you one of my favorite tricks here. I've picked out where I'm going to put my sentiment. And I've got a piece of tape here, and I'm going to put the tape down where I'm going to stamp my sentiment. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to add some splatter to my card, some black soot Distress Oxide splatter. And I want to make sure that I do not get splatter where my sentiment is going to go. Otherwise, it will make the sentiment really hard to read. You can do this with any kind of tape. I'm using highlighter tape, which is the same tape I use for taping down all of my die cuts. It's my absolute favorite. But you could do it with any kind of low-tack tape. You just want to make sure it doesn't take up more than kind of the space where your sentiment is going to be. So I've got my sprayer portion of the Distress Oxide spray, and I'm just tapping it in order to get the ink to come off and onto my card panel. And you can see that little bit of splatter adds so much interest to this clean and simple card. And there I was able to stamp out my sentiment, no problem, because I had the tape there. I just waited until the splatter had dried before I took the tape off. So that way I didn't run the risk of kind of smearing my splatter anywhere on my card front. So I've added glue all along the back of the card panel there, and now I'm just going to gently press it onto a black matting layer that I have put together there. I did use the Gina K Master Layouts 1 set here. I know you guys are shocked. I use it a lot because I really like the thin border that the outer rectangle creates. And I did want to note, I did not put any glue in the embossed areas because I want the farther back area of the card panel to stick to the matting layer, but I don't want to run the risk of any of those embossed areas getting pushed down and then staying stuck to the card in the back there. So it's usually better just to avoid getting any glue on those areas before you do everything. And here again, you want to make sure that splatter is dry before you move on to this step, because when you are smoothing down that card, you could very easily smear that splatter if it's not dry. I have a piece of craft foam here and adding some liquid adhesive there on it, and I'm just going to attach it to the back of the black matting layer. And that way, this whole piece, the emboss layer, as well as the black matting layer, they are going to be popped up onto my card base. You could also do this with some foam tape, whatever you have. I do like using craft foam if I'm trying to add some dimension, but I don't want to use the real thick tape. And then also I like using craft foam because I can glue it down. I know it'll stay once that glue is dry, but while the glue is wet, it gives me a little bit of time to wiggle things around. You guys will have to let me know in the comments what you like to use to pop things up. I'm always interested to hear what people are out there using. But that's going to finish off my card, you guys. It was so hard for me to not add sequins, I'm going to tell you. I hope you guys picked up some tips and tricks today. Please be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit that notification bell so that I can continue bringing you more crafty content in the future. Until next time, happy crafting.